Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever in the world you are. I'm Alethea, PADA's Youth Ambassador, and I'm very pleased to be the host of today's PADA Youth Workshop, The Art of Communicating Sustainability. Now, before I introduce to you our two very important guest speakers, I'd like to give a moment to thank our co-hosts who have made this event very successful. So our co-hosts are Bournemouth University, Far Eastern University, Higher Colleges of Technology, Lombok Tourism Polytechnic, Pata India Christ University Student Chapter, Pata Philippines University of Mindanao Student Chapter, University of Baguio, and Wong Soon University. So thank you very much to our 8 co-hosts who have supported us in this workshop and made this workshop a roaring success. So before we begin, I have some housekeeping notes to let you guys know. So right now for Zoom, we are actually at full capacity. So for everyone else who would like to watch our event, please follow us on Facebook Live and watch it from there. Everyone will be able to receive their certificate and their slides from our speakers, as well as a post-event recording. And this will be made available to you through the email that you registered with. Please also use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you have to our speakers. If you're watching from Facebook Live, hi, please drop any comments that you any questions that you have in the comments section of Facebook. We will take a look at it before the Q&A session, and then we will ask your questions as well. So that's it, Facebook Live, Q&A function, or ask your questions in the comments. You will receive a recording, slides, and certificate after this event. So that's it for housekeeping. And now I would like to welcome our guest speakers. First up, we have Nia, who is the Executive Director of Khiri Reach Foundation and the Regional Sustainability Coordinator of Khiri Travel. So Nia is a sustainable and responsible tourism specialist. She holds a master's degree in tourism and social anthropology. She's been working in Southeast Asia since 2013, and she combines her passion for sustainable development within the travel and hospitality industry. She assists Khiri Travel in making all destinations more responsible with focus on the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. Nia, are you there? You want to turn on your camera?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon.
So glad to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So our second speaker is Roy. He's the General Manager of Global Sustainable Tourism Council. Roy Ariel is focused on responsible travel and sustainable tourism over the past decade, and in his role, he manages GSTC's memberships, communications, events, and operations. And this basically means that he works very closely with key governmental agencies, influential companies to promote adherence to sustainability standards in travel and tourism. So thank you very much for joining us, Roy.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we begin with the presentation section of the workshop, I really wanted to start with asking the question about the importance of communication in your work and how you guys realized that communication was such an important soft skill to have. Would either of you like to kind of begin and share your personal experience?
Yeah, for me, working as a sustainability coordinator with the DMC, it's extremely important because you need to communicate the message with everyone in your team, right? And that's you really need to adapt to the working environment. You really need to sit down with the people and have an open conversation. And maybe just to tell, I mean, there were a few failures where I realized, like, okay, actually I need to really learn something and I need to develop my skills on communicating sustainability. One example is we had, when I was working in Bangkok a few years ago, we had our office maid. She always bought lunch for all our staff at the market, and she bought it in plastic bags and in styrofoam. So it was all single wrapped, all each individual portion. So I sat down with her and I sat down with our team, with our sustainability team at the time, and we discussed possible solutions for her. And we came up with the idea, okay, we're going to go together, going to go to the market, and we buy boxes, reusable boxes she can use, she can take to the market, ask the vendors to put the food in there, and then sell them at the office kitchen. So we did that, and she seemed to be really on board, and we went together to buy the boxes she wanted, and we got her a little trolley as well so she could carry the boxes, and everything was fine. And then I don't remember how it came out or how I found out, but after a while I realized that she went back to old ways. She bought the food in the plastic bags and the styrofoam containers, went to the office, got all the food out of the plastic, put it in the little boxes so it
Oh,
still looked nice for me, and then sold it from the boxes. So in the end, it was more work for her. It created even more waste, and yeah, it was just didn't go well, the project. So I realized, like, okay, I made a mistake here. Somehow it didn't work, and I didn't really listen to her needs, and I didn't ask her enough of what was most convenient for her. And yeah, so I had to learn that and go back and sit down with her and actually tell her, it's like, no, it's also okay to say, no, I can't do it. It doesn't work that way. We need to find another solution. And that was just one story I have in mind, which is quite funny for me.
yeah, that really is quite that moment
As a
where you
fail,
realize.
yeah.
Yeah. So did you find a solution in the end? Did you work out a solution together with her?
In that specific case, I don't think we actually did.
Mm,
Um, I think sometimes you just need to realize, like, okay, what can we do? Um, it wasn't a big impact because a lot of people went out for lunch anyway, so it wasn't massive.
mm.
It was just something small, and yeah, I don't know what we came up with in the end.
Because we have to pick our battles as well.
Good point. Yes.
Roy, how about you? Could you tell us a little bit about the importance of communication and this soft skill that we kind of want to learn and hone today? What's your experience with it?
So from at the GSTC, because it's a technical organization, meaning that we manage something quite technical, which are standards, the criteria, the GSTC criteria. There are a lot of technical terms that sometimes are not being properly used. So for example, there is a confusion between what is the term accreditation and what is certification, and things like that. So this confusion, many times we have to focus on it so many times, and it means that we also need to make sure that others use it correctly, because when we mix them, we get a different result. So it's not such a beautiful story that is easy to communicate, like let's say for WWF or a tour operator, you can show a beautiful image of a temple that you're going to visit, a jungle that you're going to go hiking at, or panda that you're going to save. But here you need to explain what's the difference between certification and accreditation. So this is probably a very challenging thing. Sometimes to communicate something that is more difficult to explain. You can't really use proper images rather than graphs or terminology that sometimes with different languages has different meanings. So in that sense, sometimes we have partners or others entities that want to work with us, but it doesn't really fit properly because they have something else in their mind on what GSTC is doing or what GSTC should do from their perspective. So I personally need many times to deal with this kind of identifying where are we speaking in even if we don't speak in the same level, same field, there is some connections that we can make. And then I will also talk about it a little later on in my presentation on finding these parts where we can collaborate and work together. And this is something that we can usually get through this interpersonal communication and being in a mindset of collaboration and finding how we can work together.
Okay, so really excited for your presentation later. Please also, I hope you tell us in your presentation later what's the difference between accreditation and certification organizations. That would be cool to know as well. So yeah, I think with that, we will move on to our first presentation. And I really look forward to being able to learn from two of you today. So we will start with Mia, who has an entire presentation on being able to communicate with two different stakeholders, mainly firstly your fellow workers, as well as the common stakeholders in a tour operator supply chain. So Nia, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Great to see so many students logged in. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
I guess, yes, perfect. Okay. Just to give you a bit of background information on Khiri Travel. Khiri is a destination management company. So that means we provide travel experiences to travel agents, mostly in Europe and Northern America, but could be also worldwide. We were founded in 1993, and today we operate in 7 countries, which are Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Vietnam. Our mission is to deliver creative and personalized itineraries with a very high standard to tour operators worldwide. And in everything we do, if it's internally, if it's externally with our supply chain, if it's communication with our clients or with the travelers in the end, or how we work with our destinations, we keep in mind this triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit. And just so we have the same understanding, what we believe responsible tourism is to maximize the positive effects of tourism on individuals and local communities while minimizing the negative social, environmental, and economic impacts. And actually, this year started really well for us. In January, we became the very first DMC to be Travel Life certified in all country offices. So that was a massive step. To those of you who don't know Travel Life, it's a sustainability certification with about 250 criteria covering everything sustainability related. So it's internal social management, internal environmental management, then the supply chain from tour guides, drivers, hotels, excursion providers, restaurants, how you communicate with your clients, how you communicate with the travelers, and how you work with the destinations. So it's a big certification, and just moving forward from that, the Travel Life, these criteria, it was really helpful for us because it broke down this very complex issue of sustainability. So if you just hear the word sustainability, is so massive, there's so much behind it, and it's difficult to know, okay, where to start, where can we actually start working on when we want to become a more responsible company. So I think it's generally really important to break it down as much as possible. So you can break it down to people, planet, and profit, and then break it down to all the different aspects within your company. So we can start within the office. So if we sit in the office, you can really think about, okay, this office, what kind of impacts do we have on the people, on the planet, on the profit side of things? And then you can go really step by step, small steps into the details. So if you look at people, for example, okay, that's my team around me. And then if you think about what kind of impacts we have on these people, you can think about what kind of HR policies do we have? Do we have fair working conditions? Do we have a fair salary? What kind of benefits do we provide to our staff? What kind of additional training or personal development opportunities do we offer? What about maternity leave? What about annual leave? What about healthcare? All of these things. So you can go step by step into that big topic of sustainability, but very small, and start very small with these different criteria. I think also what is very important is who you're speaking to. Yeah. So once you develop a set of policies, for example, or a set of guidelines, there's a difference of who you speak to. Yeah. So you might want to put your policies on your website, where it has to be a very professional document because it's available to the whole industry, to the whole world, to your clients, to your customers. So you want it to sound quite professional, you want to make it sound smart. But if you have the same policy and you want to actually implement it within your company so that your teams actually use that document when, for example, developing products or selling products to clients, you want to maybe use a different kind of language. Yeah, you can make it super simple, use easy language so that everyone really understands it. Again, start very simple. You can use infographics, you can use pictures, you can create like a comic style to make your guidelines and policies more accessible to your whole team. And this also goes for the supply chain, actually. So if you go to your supply chain, know your audience. There might be a massive difference if you speak to the sustainability manager of a big international hotel chain, or if you actually speak about sustainability to a very small scale rural boutique hotel in Sri Lanka. Yeah, so the knowledge might be very different. So you need to adapt your language. And then once you assess your impacts and once you set goals for all the sustainability criteria you want to work on, I find it very helpful to set action plans and to use tangible targets. Yeah. So let's say we're in the office, we're looking at what is our impact on the planet, and we look at paper. Yeah, we're printing, and okay, our action plan is we want to reduce our printing. And maybe for your policy, you even say we want to reduce our printing by 20% every year. Okay, that's a great goal, but it's difficult to understand, it's difficult to grasp. So I think for your teams within the office, you can be like, hey guys, where does paper come from? What impact does it have if we use paper? Yeah, it comes from trees. What do trees do? Why are trees so important? And then to set these targets, instead of saying we're going to reduce our use of paper by 20% or 30,000 sheets or something, which is very abstract, you can say, guys, last year we reduced our use of paper by 30%. That's 4 trees. Yeah, so everyone has a picture of a tree. Everyone can imagine what a tree is. And you could even combine it with a thing like, okay, let's go outside. Let's do a tree planting activity where we plant these 4 trees to see what our impact actually is. And for us at Khiri, I have to say we've been really lucky because since the beginning, since our founder Willem founded the company, it was his idea, it was his goal to create a responsible tour operator. So it's always been in our DNA, I would say. It's always been one of the core values, and it's it's in our mission statement actually, right? That we want to consider people, planet, and profit. And I think what's really important is when you decide to become a responsible company, that you actually start to clean your own house, that you look inside in your own company to see how responsible are you and where can you improve. And to reach that big goal, sustainability, there's lots to improve on a constant basis. What I think is really important is that it's necessary to have the support from your top management, absolutely necessary, because there's going to be you need to ask for budget, you need to ask for or implement new policies, new guidelines. There's going to be changes within your daily work. But extremely important, you need also the bottom-up approach. You need your whole team to be on board with you, to be engaged, to really work with you, and to be motivated to make changes. Yeah. So really from the CEO to the office mate, I've done a lot of trainings and meetings so that everyone understands what are our policies, what are our goals, and then you can make changes based on that. I think Ali already mentioned it briefly. It's extremely important to explain the why and the how. Yeah, it's not enough to say, hey, our CEO wants us to do less printing, so we need to save paper. It's not going to work. People might follow the policy just because it's a guideline, but actually what we want to achieve is that people understand why we're doing things. Yeah, my goal is not just to become a responsible office, but that people actually take everything they learn, take it, bring it back home, share it with their friends and families. So this is why you need to explain the why and the how. And it's, if you look at I think you should bring in the local context, absolutely. And if you, for example, look at climate change, right? Everyone can tell you stories somehow how they can see that the climate is changing within their home community. How, for example, the beaches are changing, how the forests are changing, what kind of differences do the farmers have. Everyone can tell you stories, so you can really apply it to the local context. Bring in examples and stories from the local context so that you can make sustainability more accessible and easier to understand. I'm also a big fan of open door policy. I like to engage my staff. I like to ask them to come in, share their ideas, share their opinions. And as I mentioned before, it's extremely important that they're honest and say, no, Nia, sorry, it's not going to work. It's not convenient. So I think it's important to listen to that. Yeah, I don't want to make the lives of my teams more difficult. Yeah, I want to keep things very simple, but of course make some improvements so that we become more responsible. It's extremely important to listen to their ideas. Some of your team members, they might actually, I don't know, in their free time, they might work on a social project. Great. They've got so much knowledge that they could bring in, share it with the others in the office, and engage the other teams. We also created local sustainability teams, and there's always going to be people who are very motivated, who believe in it, who want to make changes. And these are the ones who are going to lead initiatives, who are going to really be a front runner when it comes to making changes, right? And then there's going to be people who might not be that much interested. Okay, well, and really celebrate these champions. Yeah, we always have the best employee of the year. So then it's about sales and about performance and all of that. Well, now we also have the most responsible employee of the year. So that means really someone who leads the sustainability initiatives, who's really a good example, a really good role model within the office. And then in the end of the year, he gets a big prize. He's very proud of it, and he can share it with his team members. Generally, I'm also a big fan of inviting expert speakers. Yeah. So when we do trainings or workshops about different aspects on sustainability, sometimes it's necessary to have a sit-down PowerPoint presentation kind of training. But generally, I think sometimes this whole issue of sustainability can be very dry. It can be, quite gloomy sometimes when you talk about the effects of climate change on our planet and all of that. So what I like to do is I try to make it as fun as possible, yeah, and as engaging as possible. And with somebody coming from outside, it's a new person, is an expert on the field, and it's not always me telling my teams what to do and what not to do, basically. And this goes to, you can be really creative. For example, we had a nutritionist coming in and talking about a healthy diet, or we had somebody coming in to talk about the effects on plastic on our body, or we had a conservationist coming in talking about the wildlife in the respective countries. So it's really specific talks or information, not necessarily always related to your everyday tasks, just because I want to provide our teams with a more holistic idea of sustainability. You, as I said, make it fun. So you can do that with games, competition, quizzes. I love to do quizzes. It's super simple. You can do Kahoot, or you can do Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, for example. And just on Saturday, I think it was UN Day. Okay, so I did a quiz about the 17 SDGs. Or if it's World Ocean Day, we do a quiz about the ocean. You can ask for photo competitions. Yeah, we had photo competitions. For example, show yourself being a responsible employee, and then they have all the freedom to take pictures of themselves to show how responsible they are in the office. There could be games, there could be competitions between the different departments, or there could be also competitions between the different countries even. So let's play Vietnam against Indonesia and Sri Lanka against Myanmar. What I want to do is we want to really create pride and ownership. I want our staff to take the lead in these projects. I want them to be proud of what we're doing, and take the learned back home and outside of the company. And what is really great, and I've seen that with Khiri, is that people are proud to work for Khiri because it's a responsible tour operator. So when being asked why people join specifically Khiri, quite a lot of times they say, well, I know they are responsible. Yeah. And then they are proud of all the different activities we do when we do cleanups or when we do tree planting activities. Well, they're proud of it, and then they go back home and tell their family and friends about it. And this is what I want to create. As I said, it's extremely important to make it accessible and fun. So don't use any big words. I make it as simple as possible. I actually don't really talk about I don't mention the word sustainability a lot because it's very difficult to grasp. Okay, so that's internally, and now let's move externally to our supply chain. I divided it into tour guides, accommodation and excursion providers, and destinations. So for our tour guides and drivers, I extremely appreciate them. These guys are our eyes on the ground. Yeah, we're sitting in the office. We don't know what's happening on the ground, so it's extremely important to have a good relationship with them. Yeah? So whenever the guides or the drivers they come into the office, you can sit down with them, have a coffee, ask them about, hey, what's going on, what's going well, maybe what's not going so well, and you can ask them. It's like, I know you went to that national park recently. What do you think about the rangers? Do you think they did a good job in protecting the wildlife and really following the guidelines and the rules? Ask for their feedback. Yeah. Obviously, we also do trainings. We invite outside experts, for example, to give them a child protection training so that they understand how to keep children within the tourism industry safe. We did trainings on biodiversity and wildlife so that they know, okay, how do I have to behave in a national park, for example. We also work with them very closely in the whole process of developing products. Yeah, they know the communities. They've traveled around so much that they really know. Okay, maybe there's one family. The woman of the family is doing handicrafts, and maybe she would like to do a workshop for our clients. You know, that the tourists can visit her house, sit down with her, and she can teach our tourists how to do batik or weaving or something. Or maybe there's a lady who loves cooking and would love to start their own cooking class. Great. So we work with them a lot to develop new products which are responsible, and then we know right away, okay, the profit actually goes to the people directly and not to a big corporation. For the excursion and accommodation providers, we have developed a sustainability contract. It's a contract which asks them to basically supply with very basic social and environmental aspects. Yeah? And this is something when we sign a contract with a hotel, we ask them to also sign our sustainability contract. And it's just basically to raise awareness so that they know, okay, we do take these things seriously. We have also developed sustainability assessments, which again ask a lot of detailed questions about social and environmental aspects. These assessments are also shared with our teams, so they know when they go on a fam trip or on an inspection to a hotel, they can ask the questions and they know what it means and they know what we're looking for. And sometimes it's interesting because sometimes hotels, for example, they are very proud. They tell you right away how they support the local communities and what they do with their wastewater and what they do with their food waste and all of that. And sometimes hotels are like, why do you start asking me about waste suddenly? Because usually what DMCs want to know is like, what does the hotel room look like, right? So it creates awareness, yeah. And if the hotels or excursion suppliers want to improve we're very happy to do that. We're super happy to share best practices. I'm very happy to go into the hotel and give additional training, or we can connect them with NGOs or other organizations who can really support them in becoming more responsible. Of course, we also share our policies and guidelines with them, but actually we try to avoid any finger pointing or any banning. Yeah, our goal is to support them to become more responsible. Yeah, we want to communicate with them on sustainability and try to engage them to become more responsible instead of just banning them. With our destinations, we actually work very closely with our competitors. So we sit together. On a regular basis, I have calls with my competition basically, and we discuss how we, as the industry leaders, as the big DMCs, how we can support responsible tourism development within our country. Yeah, so we were founding members of Impact Vietnam, for example, which is a network of responsible DMCs. And what we then do is we organize workshops and trainings, for example, again for the hotels, when us, Khiri, but also our competitors, the other DMCs, invite the hotels, and it's a free half-day workshop where we provide ready-to-use solutions for the hotels. So there might be chemical-free cleaning products, there might be eco-friendly amenities, there might be a social project, so that the hotels can come together, have that platform to discuss sustainability in the accommodation sector, and can really take something from it, can learn something, and can right away find solutions there. So we're really trying to work together with the industry to promote responsible tourism development. And we are super happy to share best practices, because we really believe in support, raising awareness. We need to start very small and encourage collaborations, because we can't do it by ourselves. Yeah. So if a hotel, gets a sustainability contract just from Khiri, they're going to be like, okay. But if that same hotel gets a similar contract from all the other big DMCs, well, then the hotel maybe is going to start to think about and say, oh, maybe we need to make some changes. So this is generally what we want to do. Again, is keep the language very simple, start very, very small, think about the impacts, think about the audience, and make it accessible for the audience, and make it fun, and actually have fun communicating on sustainability. Okay, I think that was it from me, actually.
Thank you so much, Nia. So we do have a little bit of time, and we're going to play a video that Nia sent us.
Yeah, maybe I can just mention one thing with the video is it really was made by our team. So we ask our teams like, hey guys, do you want to make a video? Quite a lot of them, they're really talented and they love to play with their phones and cameras, and it's fun for them. They can really go out, leave the office for a day. We have a few more videos like that, and be creative. And I think, and at the end, they're super happy. They're really proud of the video. We share it with our tour agents and we share it on our social media. So it really, it creates that pride, which I'm really proud of and very happy.
I think one thing that really stood out to me in your presentation was this idea of being able to help them create this sense of ownership over the sustainability that is done by the company. And this video really encapsulates that a lot because it shows the width and breadth of the different sustainable projects that you guys are involved in. So
exactly, yeah. And it's so diverse, you know, that's not just plastic waste. There's so many things, so many aspects to sustainability, and it's important to get them engaged and understand what it means.
definitely. So we will continue this conversation later with Nia during our Q&A section. There are already a few questions in the Q&A for Nia. So if you have more questions for her, please remember to put it in the Q&A chat box below, not the chat. Also, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, hi, please put your questions in the comment section below. So now we're going to move on to our second presentation of the day by Roy from GSTC. Hi, Roy.
Hi.
Welcome back.
May I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, show my screen. Okay, everyone can see?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good local time to everyone. And while Nia had a fantastic presentation on how a tour operator would communicate internally to your team and how to communicate also with the supply chain and those that you work with, I will focus a little bit more on how GSTC communicates with governments and other private sector entities. Okay. So first, let me just give you a quick explanation on what GSTC is, because it is a little bit complicated and we need to make sure that you understand it, because that's also what we'll talk about, how to communicate this more complex thing. So the Global Sustainable Tourism Council establishes and manages global sustainable standards for the tourism industry. That's the GSTC criteria. It includes it as a holistic perspective, and it includes economic, environmental, and societal dimensions. And of course, by applying the GSTC criteria, it helps to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So sustainability, we see information and articles about sustainable tourism in many places. Many people talk about it, many companies mention it. As you can see, it's all over the media. And also Booking.com last year had a report showing that 70% of global travelers say that they would more likely to book an accommodation knowing it's eco-friendly. So many in the industry and also destinations and governments take notice of this notion. But there is an issue, because what is exactly sustainability in tourism? It's something that we can discuss about it maybe perhaps for an hour or a few hours if we have just a chat around the table or at a classroom. But we need to use some very clear definitions. And this is the definition that we'll use now. Tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, and the environment and host communities. So another clarification, that sustainable tourism does not refer to a type of tourism like ecotourism, medical tourism, nature tourism, adventure tourism, but it's actually an aspiration for all types of tourism to become more sustainable. So Nia was sharing that Khiri from the beginning set its vision to be a responsible tour operator, but any tour operator, any accommodation can apply sustainability practices in its aspiration and practices and eventually become more sustainable. It doesn't mean that it needs to be doing only very specific activities. Also, a big hotel in your capital city in the country that you're now at can become more sustainable and eventually be certified as a sustainable hotel. So how do we recognize what sustainable tourism is? That's an issue, and that's why there are many labels out there that say this is a sustainable tour operator, this is a sustainable accommodation or destination. And with the GSTC, we know of hundreds of such schemes, labels, criteria, and standards. And that's the reason the GSTC was founded about in 2007 by the United Nations, UNWTO, UNEP, and Rainforest Alliance, together with a larger coalition of about 27 other entities, to create this one language, right? So we will be able to speak the same language when we say sustainable tourism. What is it exactly? When we look at when we ask about the sustainability of an accommodation in North America and in Southern India, it will have at least a similar language. So we can compare, we can use the similar standards, similar to what we do all around the world when we use standards and certifications. We create this one clear language that everyone can speak and use that to understand how to recognize a certain phenomenon and how we can apply the specific criteria that are in the GSTC criteria towards achieving a more sustainable tourism practices. So there are actually two sets of the GSTC criteria that were developed. One is for the industry used by hotels and tour operators, and one for destinations. So the first criteria in 2007 was created with input coming from more than 80,000 people, relevant people. We analyzed also about 4,500 criteria from more than 60 different existing standards and principles and guidelines to create this. We found the common ground, and we found the most important things that appear in all of them and chose them, or perhaps we chose those that contain also others. So we now have this GSTC criteria that contains these things. We also revise the criteria every few years because it's based on the ISIL Alliance Code of Best Practice and Standard Setting Code. The GSTC criteria has 4 pillars. As I mentioned, it has a holistic view. So the first pillar is sustainability management. The second one is social and economic benefit. And the third one focuses on cultural heritage. The fourth is on the environment. Many times when people speak or think about sustainability, they only think about the fourth pillar, the environmental part. But we must remember, and this is why the GSTC criteria is kind of a baseline for everyone, is that it includes also the other pillars, right? Cultural heritage is absolutely important in the world of tourism, perhaps less in other forms of economical activities. The socio-economic benefit is of course important, and the management itself. There is also a correlation between the SDGs and the GSTC criteria. As I mentioned, by using the GSTC criteria, one can find and understand which SDGs they work towards too. Now, let me just give you a quick mention on the technical terms that before Ariel was talking about. So what's the role of sustainability standard? The first and the foremost importance is it's the basis for certification. We also use it for training and education and awareness by tourism companies and by government employees and destination managers. It also used for guidelines for legal and regulatory codes. It also used as a measurement and evaluation to understand where your company is now and where you want to be in the future. And also create market access clarity with that jungle of schemes and labels that we've seen that are out there. The role of certification actually, what it does, it verifies the validity of claims of what a company does. So in the case of, let me speak about Khiri because they are GSTC members and we've just heard from Nia. They have certain claims on what they do, that they are a sustainable and responsible company. But how would one know that? Well, you can go to the website, as Nia mentioned, and see the things that they say that they do. But to really, really, really believe that and verify the validity of their claims, you see that they are actually being certified. That's the certified by TravelLife. In the case of Khiri, many of their offices are certified by TravelLife for tour operators. So you see that sign and you know that they've been through a rigorous validation of their claims of being a sustainable tour operator. It also helps to risk manage provide discipline for improvement, and the market access function. So just to clarify the difference between certification and accreditation, certification is a voluntary third-party assessment through an audit of tourism enterprise. So one would have third-party auditor coming and assess the situation of the company. GSTC does not provide certifications, and we rely on certification bodies throughout the world that do that. What we do, the GSTC, is accredit those through our partner ASI, accredit those that actually certify. So accreditation is the quality on the certification bodies, or in other words, that's the certification of the certifiers. So a hotel or a tour operator is being certified by a certification body. That certification body is accredited, meaning that it is being certified as a proper certification body, meaning that the process that it's been doing, it follows the international high norms. Now that we understand a little bit about the complexity of the technical term of what GSTC is and the core of it, let me share a little bit on how we communicate it with our stakeholders. So first, we follow a model set by WWF. It's basically similar to what WWF is doing, and that's finding the largest way to influence the market by affecting change by working with entities that have large share of the market and are influential, meaning when they act, when they behave, when they make a shift in their behavior, it will influence all the others. In that sense, we reduce the amount of resources that we need to spend on speaking with different entities. And we focus on those with the highest impact. If you want to watch, I highly recommend to understand this perception and strategy. You can watch this very good TED Talk by Jason Clay from WWF. You can just search for it, or you can also click later on the PDF. There is a link that goes to the TED Talk. So here are two examples on how some things that we've done similar to that. One is is a long-term collaboration that we have with WWF and Royal Caribbean Cruises. And about in 2016, they put some goals to reach certain amount of sourcing certified sustainable seafood as well. Well, that's less relevant for our talk, but the other focus is that they've set a target to reach 1,000 or 1,400 sustainable tours by the end of 2019. And this year they already reached more than 2,000. So what they've done eventually is by creating a framework where Royal Caribbean pushes and says, hey, if you're a sustainable tour operator offering shore excursions and you want to contract with us, we'll provide you a better contracting terms if you are certified as sustainable. And in that sense, what happened is that all of a sudden, many tour operators that were working with Royal Caribbean had the reason, a very clear financial reason, to achieve certification as sustainable. Some of them perhaps were already working sustainably and just needed to get a certification, or perhaps just improve a little, while others needed to make a lot of changes, but they realized that it's worth doing that, reach certification, changing their behavior to behave and act and use sustainability practices to be able to work and be promoted better by Royal Caribbean. And in that sense, we have now thousands of tour operators offering the shore excursions to cruise lines that have become sustainable over the past few years. And we still see it influences even through now during the pandemic. Another example is how we work with TUI Group, which is, if you're familiar, it's a huge European-based group of tour operators. They have accommodations, they have airlines, and they have set goals to reach 100% of their hotels to be certified as sustainable based on the GSTC framework. So what they've done is, you can see here the numbers of hotels that they've been influencing so far. Those are the hotels that they are the group owned. But now after this goal will be reached, then perhaps they will move and influence in a similar manner to those other hotels that they work with, similar to how Nia was sharing on how they influence their supply chain to become more sustainable. Well, you're such a large group, such as TUI, you have very large power to influence those hotels that you work with. So in that sense, while we work together with them, they actually amplify this and make it much easier. These are just a quick list of some of large and important members that we have. We have plenty of more, just for you to see how diverse it is. You might see groups, you might see destinations and countries, you might see OTAs. So it's very complicated to realize on how we communicate what GSTC is doing and how they can use the GSTC framework and the GSTC criteria to advance sustainability in the tourism sector. Now, a few years ago, we tried to identify the clear distinction of stakeholders that visit our website, that come to us to understand how they can learn more, how they can use the GSTC criteria. And if you go now to the GSTC website, you might see this. Right, it's kind of these 5 stakeholders that we have identified is very distinct. Now, there are, of course, some other stakeholders that are engaged with the GSTC, for example, OTAs that you don't see here in these 5 sectors, or academia, and a few others. But these specific ones, we realized that we can kind of narrow down a more separate and focused message on how we can communicate. And therefore, we'll be able to be more impactful and save everyone's time if we just provide clear information to each group. So for travelers, we actually don't speak much with travelers. As I've mentioned, and as you've seen before, we mostly work with governments, with the private sector, and other NGOs to actually expand the usage and market access for certification, and of course usage of the GSTC criteria. So we did create, because we realized that we do have people that come to the GSTC website to find answers. Where can I find a sustainable destination or something like that? So we did create a page for them with information, but it's very condensed to 1 or 2 pages, and that's it, while the other ones include more information. For the certification bodies, there are already many that are being involved with the GSTC, but some are not yet engaged with us. So for both of them, they can go to our website and find the specific information where we catered the information for them. So that section would be more technical. It will refer to questions about certification, about the standards and how to use them, less on how to apply the criteria by hotel, by a tour operator, but actually more on the framework and standard setting and etc. For the public sector, we created also a page with specific communications on what do we do with governments. Now, governments and destinations are a little bit different. When I refer to governments, I refer to the country level organization that manages the tourism or the promotion of tourism of that country. While destinations would be perhaps a municipality, perhaps an area that promotes itself as sustainable. So for them, it's a little bit different because they work very differently from the other stakeholders that I've shown so far. For them, we created also over the years, we learned how to how to communicate and how to work with them, and provide this clear message on how they are able to use standards, how they're able to promote the usage of the GSTC criteria by stakeholders within their country. I will less focus on that. I will share more a little on the private sector part. So on the private sector, right, we identified both the tour operators and accommodations are a little bit similar. We created these clear few action things that if you're a tour operator and you want to understand what to do, how to become more sustainable, here are the things that you can do. Right, the first one is go and download the GSTC criteria. It's available in many languages. And one of the things that over the years we've learned is that the translations are really helpful. So while the GSTC criteria is in English, we have a lot of general stakeholders, so those that want to follow global standards for sustainability in the travel and tourism industry. Now they can access it and they can see it in many different languages. And once in a while we have comments, hey, I have a question about this translation. So the translation are more used as a more an educational level. For certification, it needs to be the original English version. But it's very clear. You go, it's in the public domain. We're a nonprofit organization, so anyone can access it. But then we created these action items of what they can do. So first, adhere to the GSTC criteria, become a GSTC member, become certified, becoming certified by, of course, one of the certification bodies, because GSTC does not certify. And many times we get inquiries asking us, how can I become certified by GSTC? And it's actually very simple. We send them to this page and ask them, please have a look at it. If you have if you have further questions, come back. But over the years, we've kind of improved it and found that after we send that email, they don't come back to us because we probably find a lot of this information. Sometimes we help to connect with the certification bodies. So in that sense, we had to clearly identify the stakeholders and provide a different message to them on what is relevant to them. I'll go quickly back and you can see now where we have the travelers is information on how to travel responsibly as a traveler. Certification bodies is on the technical terms of using the standards. The public sector is how to create plans and goals and strategies for long term and how to influence the country that they are dealing with. And for the private sector, it's mostly on how to apply it and become a sustainable service provider. Now, recently, over the past 2-3 years, we've been working more and more with OTAs. And I'll share with you this from booking.com that they know that the customers make sustainable decisions and many of the partners are eager to meet that demand. Together with us, they help to bring more clarity and transparency. And the same with Agoda, that they already claim that Agoda's moonshot goal is to mainstream sustainable travel. They've doubled their investment in sustainability and testing tools for how to help travelers to make more sustainable choices. So again, in working with the OTAs would be similar to what I mentioned at the beginning and how GSTC identifies those that amplify the message. And I'd like to share with you a little bit on more and how I personally speak with partners that are not necessarily fall under these categories, or sometimes they do, but need further discussion with them. So we have a number of levels. I would say 2 levels. One is the vision level, right? That's we want to work with the partner that whoever it is, government or an entity that doesn't really fall under the categories I showed you before. The vision is sustainability in the tourism industry, right? We want to work together. We want to help them and help them to help us and help everyone to achieve this vision. The second level is the details, that the GSTC criteria and the framework. So while the vision is something that we can think about on kind of something we can aim to reach in the near future, in the farther future, and it has this importance, the details are a little bit more technical, right? That's the GSTC criteria and the framework of certification. So we need to kind of many times to create, well, I say we, when I speak, I'll speak now about myself. When I speak and interact with partners, I need to create this kind of connection between them, and that's where the personalization comes in. It's kind of a more relevant and specific actions. So perhaps there is an NGO that promotes very specific standards for not a holistic perspective for the whole travel industry, perhaps just for water activities, for snorkeling and diving, which is a true case. And we have such as GSTC member. So we're trying to think on how we share the same vision, but on the details, it's not exactly the same. And this is where the personalization come, and we actually try to communicate and speak about it. Now, when I have such a discussion with a partner, I have a few things in mind. And number one is how we can work together and how we can collaborate while having the same vision and share some of the details. It doesn't have to be all of the details, all of the information related to the GSTC criteria. And then we personalize it. And of course, sometimes it's not as smooth, but perhaps sometimes it takes longer to discuss it. And perhaps there is no match. Perhaps it's just a waste of time for both entities to collaborate or work together. But it's very important to understand if there is a match and communicate it properly. Now, it's something that, of course, through time, you're able to learn from experience. Of course, you need to have a few experiences where it didn't work well. And that's something that if you want to ask specific questions on that, I'm happy to answer that afterwards. You can also look at these three points that I look at as ethos, pathos, and logos. If you're familiar with these Greek terms on communication perspectives. So for conclusion, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's quite difficult to communicate more technical terms to a more wide sector. So when we speak with the certification bodies, it's quite easy. But when we speak with the others, we need to spend a little bit more time to understand who are those that stand in front of us, and slowly we've learned on how to say the message in a more proper manner. For example, we learned that we have to speak all the time, many times, every time, to mention the difference between certification and accreditation. So even now, I had to put it here to make sure that you understand what we're talking about. So that's something that we've learned over the years and over time, and communication is something that you always evolve and always learn on how to communicate it. That's it. I'm really happy to answer more questions, and you can visit the GSTC website to learn more. And I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Roy, for that really detailed, really insightful presentation. Can I also ask Nia to come back on screen, and we will kickstart our Q&A session right now. So honestly, there are so many things that I want to ask you guys, but I will let the youths lead the conversation. So we do have quite a few good questions coming into the Q&A chat box. For everyone who is on Facebook Live joining us, please write your questions in the comment function down there, and our colleague will send the questions to us here in Zoom. So one of the first questions that we have is directed to Nia, and Roy, you can also chip in afterwards. It is from Shannon Crucio, and the question is, what is your advice to companies that want to start becoming sustainable, but they're kind of afraid of not succeeding, or they're afraid that they do something wrong? What would you tell them to do?
First of all, don't be afraid of failing or not succeeding. I mean, it's a learning process for everyone, um, and you're gonna make mistakes. I think that's normal on every journey, and that's absolutely fine. And you need to be able to go back to your initiatives and monitor them and adapt them and adjust them. Um, but start very small. Start really, really small. Start looking, as I said, look in your own office. Like, what do you do with your waste? Where does the wastewater go to? What do you do? Where does your food come from? What kind of, yeah, how do you work with your staff? What kind of, how do you support your staff? Start very, very small. Um, if you're not really sure where to start or how to start, I do recommend that a certification just helps you, because it, as I said before, it breaks down the big issue of sustainability, and it breaks it down into smaller criteria, and it tells you exactly, okay, I need to check my light bulbs, what kind of light bulbs I have, or I need to check what kind of paper I have in the office, or so it really gives you guidance on where to start and how to start. So I think that for me personally was really helpful, also to communicate it with the staff, because you can say, hey guys, we have our travel life audit coming up, and we need to, improve this, and we need to change that. And people, again, this creates pride, because now everyone is super happy and really proud of being travel life certified. And you have the auditor coming in every 2 years, and it's really exciting. And yeah, people get really engaged if they know they're working towards that goal of being travel life certified. So for me, that was really helpful. So I do recommend a certification as a management tool, basically.
Okay. Yeah, because that certification kind of gives you like a step-by-step guide on how to
Exactly,
go
yeah.
about tackling
And it
it.
also supports you with best practice examples, so you can have a look. It's like, okay, what do the others do? What could I implement? So it's really helpful.
Yeah. Roy, how about you? Do you have anything else to add? What do you
Well,
what advice to give to people who want to start?
I will just keep Nia's answer. I think it was pretty good,
Okay, great.
especially at the end, suggesting
Certification,
to
yeah.
use.
Very supportive, mutually beneficial relationship we have going on here. I think maybe a follow-up question to, if I've already started and I've started small and I've managed to get everyone in my office on board together with me, and this is very much a small project, has a small impact, it's just our office. When do I then kind of scale up to our bigger operations? At what point should I start trying to do that?
I I find it difficult to say when the right point is there. I think once you have the feeling that your team understands why you're trying to become more responsible and what your goals are, what your action plans are, then I think it automatically somehow moves into the time where you engage your teams and engage your individual staff, right? So then you might have your sales department, and suddenly they take over a role in, selling responsible products and communicating with the clients. And then you have your product development department, and they suddenly understand, okay, great, here are our guidelines, our policies, and we understand how to develop responsible products, so they automatically will go out and have sustainability in the back of their mind when developing new products. And at that time, then I think you can also start communicating with the suppliers on sustainability, when you are aware, okay, from now on we want to sell more responsible products. Okay, we need to make sure that our hotels are actually responsible options. So how can we do that? And then you can start, go out and talk with them and have a discussion with them. But time-wise, I think it depends also on the size of your company. Yeah, so it's difficult.
Okay. We have a really interesting question coming in. And I think, Roy, because one of your case studies mentioned it, so this might be for you. It's about major cruise ships.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, so I'm going to read it out for our audience. And maybe Roy can take lead, and then Nia can add to anything else. So Samagrada, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, asks, sustainability and mega cruise ships are a contradiction in her opinion. How can you claim that MSC, which has been fined for trashing illegally the Mediterranean Sea, or any other cruise company involved in mass tourism can influence positively when the actual ships themselves pollute, are very pollutive. And there is no holistic, sustainable approach in the very core of their existence. So this is something that kind of from a outsider's consumer point of view, we really see that huge contradiction there. Is there something that you guys would like to add to the conversation and the debate?
Oh, yes. So in that sense, I would say it's also similar to the issue of, well, similar in that sense of the contradiction, similar with flying, right? We know that air transportation is very important and crucial to greenhouse gas emissions that influences the helps to accelerate the climate change. But our work is kind of taking that as is, meaning that that's the situation now, and then we try to work with those that can affect. So if cruise line company is not necessarily at the moment, well, first, the GSTC criteria at the moment, we don't have specific indicators for cruise lines because it's such a huge industry and very specific, right? As I mentioned, the industry criteria, the GSTC industry criteria mostly is used by tour operators and accommodations. But what we do is we work with them in that sense to influence their supply chain because they have a large impact on other entities. So while they perhaps their self-change is not necessarily following the GSTC criteria, they help to proliferate and push the demand for certification out there. So in that sense, we're happy to work with anyone. So we don't necessarily look at, say, this one is good and this one is bad. We don't work with the bad ones. We love to work with anyone because when we want to make a change, we need to work together and collaborate with everyone. And that's what I mentioned on the collaboration in my last slide. Not necessarily it fits exactly the same, but then if we realize that there is a potential to create an impact, and it's a great question, because in that example, we can look at the impact that it brought. We see already thousands of tour operators that have taken this action without going into the policies of each cruise line. Now, it was so successful that other cruise lines also copied that, and now we have actually GSTC has good relationship with CLIA, with the Cruise Line International Association. And they also support certain destinations where a lot of the cruise lines come. Support these destinations by helping to provide more assessments on the sustainability option. So there are things, even when there are difficulties, we can identify how we can work together. And let me share just a personal matter on that. I really recommend to anyone who is interested in that part, in the collaboration part, I recommend you two really good books to read if you're into that. One is called Getting More by Stuart Diamond. And the other one is, I forgot, but it's Negotiate as if your life depends on it. And that's eventually really helpful to see on how you can actually negotiate and collaborate with almost anyone to advance certain interests that are for the greater good.
Yeah, I think that's a really good balanced answer as well, to like really focus on that potential and opportunity of collaboration, and not just saying like this is bad, this is black and white, because it never really is a black and white issue anymore right now in our world. Nia, do you have anything else to add to the debate?
No, I think our goal should be to mainstream sustainability, right, and include everyone in the discussion, and to, yeah, as Roy said, collaborate and try to support each other.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that insightful answer, Roy. So we have a lot of questions flowing in right now, but limited time. So let's just see. This is definitely an interesting question, very thought-provoking question from Max, and I think it would go to Nia. So who should pay for the extra costs involved in introducing new sustainability practices? Hotels and tour operators out of their past and future profits, or the clients, the customers, who would end up paying extra?
Interesting question. Yeah. To be honest, I have a budget per year, and it's actually not, you don't need to have a massive budget. So if you go for a certification, of course, you need to pay for the certification. And if you need to buy new light bulbs for the office, or if you want to go big and implement solar panels, for example, yes, it's a big investment. But honestly, costs for us have not been a major factor. Costs have not increased. In some parts, you can even see costs decrease. If you think about the saving water and energy, you save costs. Investing in your employees, you have less staff turnover. It's gonna save you costs in the long run. And yeah, generally, I mean, it's we need to make an investment sometimes, but it's going to pay out in the long term, I think. Yeah, I think for us, also, the costs we charge to clients has not really increased because of sustainability. Sometimes we would include maybe a donation to a specific project on a tour, or if we say, hey, you're going to do a city tour in Chiang Mai and we're going to plant a tree for you, yeah, we going to charge that to clients, but it's not a major factor. So I think costs should not be have too much impact on your decisions.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I also know for a fact that there are so many great case studies out there that show going green and taking on more sustainable ways of doing things actually helps the bottom line rather than increases the bottom line. So that cost is definitely something that shouldn't be an issue, both for the organization as well as the customers. Yeah. So I guess one last question, both for Roy and Nia, and then we will wrap this up. It's really been a wonderful time, and I'm so sorry that we are short on time and we can't go deeper into all these issues. So this is really taking a huge step back from just talking about communication to really about how the pandemic has affected both of your organizations. So how do you promote sustainability during this pandemic? Especially because the tourism industry is hit the hardest?
For us, we're extremely hit, like everyone else as well. But we think now than ever, sustainability is actually extremely important. So we still focus on sustainability. We are actually quite busy. We're having lots of projects. We are working on new projects, which will be launched anytime soon, I guess. So once communication in the media, for example, is not just about COVID, then we really have a few projects which are going to be launched right away. We are hit as everyone else, but it's not really, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a reason to give up on sustainability. But it just shows, and if you follow the media, I think it shows that sustainability is mentioned a lot of times, and I think that clients are aware on that, or travelers are aware about their impacts more as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge spotlight now, especially because we were struggling before the pandemic with all these sustainability issues and over tourism, and now because of the pandemic, we've been able to see that it is possible to change very drastically and very rapidly. Yeah. Roy, how about you?
At the beginning of the pandemic, we were more pessimistic, and now we're quite optimistic. The reason is that, well, at first, because a lot of entities that we've been collaborating with, some of them had to put just a stop to it and had to focus just on the existing programs and just make sure that they make as much profit and not lose with the situation. But parallel to that, what we've seen is that a lot of people, right? We have of course sad situation where we have loss of life, and a sad situation where we have a lot of loss of jobs for people. But many of those people that have lost jobs, many of them are looking for learning and upgrading their skills in their careers. And we run GSTC, we have online trainings for a few years now. And this year, the classes were just filled up so fast because we have so many people. Some of them, yes, they're now reinventing or have time to develop personal development, but some are actually some are still in their positions, in their jobs, and want to influence from within the organization. Some of them are not necessarily the sustainability person. We have just a person in a large company. They are personally interested in these issues. And then later on, we learn that they influence. So that's, on the one hand, we've had a lot of trainings and a lot of people. Our training is about what the GSTC criteria is. We go criterion by criterion, pillar by pillar. And a second optimistic, more positive side is that many destinations and governments have used this time we've seen to collaborate with us, with the GSTC, and put sustainability clearly on top of their priorities. So while of course we are in a very difficult situation for everyone in the industry, we at the GSTC have seen a lot of good signs of important entities that are continuing to work and don't drop it. For example, I mean, as Nia here speaks from Khiri, it's not, okay, pandemic, we stop, we're no longer a responsible company. No, they continue to do exactly what they do because the responsibility part is such an important part of the DNA that it doesn't matter what situation, they'll stay like that, hopefully. And the same for other entities that have already taken it. So in general, I'm actually quite, on that part, I'm happy and glad of what is happening. Of course, not of the pandemic situation that affects everyone.
Yeah, I think I'm very happy that the answers from both of you are very resoundingly optimistic about the future of tourism, in the sense that we are all trying to move towards that sustainable and responsible tourism industry. And it really can be seen from people joining the GSTC trainings, and those are people that are trying to influence from the ground up within their organizations, as well as organizations themselves turning like a spotlight on sustainability. I think it's definitely the COVID-19 pandemic definitely has given us an opportunity, and that the silver lining behind the cloud is definitely that we have an opportunity to redesign the tourism industry in a more sustainable way. So yeah. Thank you very much once again to Roy and Nia for joining us as our guest speaker for this workshop. You guys have been absolutely wonderful. The presentations have been so insightful. I learned so much. Today I learned the difference between accreditation and accreditation organization. So thank you. Once again, I do want to remind everyone that we will be having this recording uploaded, so you can catch us again if you want to revise or watch it again. We will have it on our YouTube channel. The speakers have generously agreed to share their slides with us, so those will be shared with us as well. And of course, attendees will receive a certificate of participation from PADA Youth to thank you for participating in this workshop. So before we end, I do want to thank our co-hosts once again for making this a very successful activity and workshop by PADA Youth. So this workshop was really supported by Bournemouth University, Far Eastern University, Higher Colleges of Technology, Lombok Tourism Polytechnic, PATA India Christ University Student Chapter, PATA Philippines University of Mindanao Student Chapter, University of Baguio, as well as Wong Song University. So thank you very much to our co-hosts for making this such a successful event. Of course, I know a lot of us have been asking questions, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but another question that has been asked very frequently is, how can I be a PATA youth member? So really, just go to pada.org/youth to join our PATA youth community. There you will receive a list of top 10 steps on how to kickstart your individual free membership with PATA. And it will be the program is full of insightful, knowledgeable webinars like this one, as well as mentorship and networking sessions for the youths. So thank you very much for today. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Nia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And
Bye.
that is it from us. Goodbye, everybody.